Cascone. I am the campus director at our Clarkston campus, and just really excited about this evening. I appreciate, feel very thankful, very grateful for Ryan Morrill and Susan Sylvester in asking me to kind of host this evening with an amazing panel of parents and even grandparents on the panel, which is great. Awesome perspective, lots of wisdom. So I am married to my husband, Tim, for 14 years, and we've got 3 daughters. Haley, who is 22, and Macy Ray is 13, and Avery is 11. So we're a blended family. I brought Haley into our marriage, and so that, you know, had its ups and downs raising a daughter, and I was a single mom for a while, so I feel like I kind of had my hands in a lot of different perspectives of being a mom of 3 daughters. So just, again, super thankful that y'all are here this evening. Like I mentioned, Susan Sylvester, which is awesome. She's on the call with us. She's kind of like manning the call here with us. And she is our Central Kkids curriculum director. So she is a big deal with our Kkids team. It makes a lot of things happen, and you be humble, because that's the truth. I see you laughing, and that is the truth. Kathy Wilson, will you go ahead and introduce yourself to us, please?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Wilson, and I am the grandmother on the team, or maybe one of the grandmothers on the team. I have 2 children, a son and a daughter, and my daughter has 3 daughters. So we have lots of girls in our family. My background is one of being an elementary school principal and an early childhood consultant. So I've done quite a bit with lots of kids, seen lots of girls over the years. So hopefully I'll be able to share some things that you will find valuable. So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. Rob and Michelle, do you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves to us?
Sure. Hey, we're Rob and Michelle. I'm Michelle.
I'm Rob.
We've been married 32 years, and we have 3 daughters. They are 26, 27, and 29. And we have a granddaughter on the way. And we were at Kensington for 26 years. We were blessed to raise our girls there, and now we are in Atlanta. So we're happy to be with you guys tonight. I see a bunch of familiar faces. So, hi.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm glad that it worked out. That's the beauty of Zoom. It doesn't matter where you live. You can still join in. It's really awesome. And last but certainly not least, Brian and Reba Johnson, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Reba Johnson. This is my husband, Brian. We've been married 14 years. We have 3 daughters. Adriana's 12, Isabella's 9, and Juliana's 8. I'm an allergist here in Clarkston. My husband's an oral surgeon, and we see both pediatric and adult patients. So we're in the throes of child rearing and juggling our practices and social obligations and children's activities. And now we have the new dimension of schooling from home with COVID, which adds a lot of different aspects. But we're super excited to be here. We're honored to be here, and we thank Kensington for this opportunity.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. We are going to dive right in because we want to honor everybody's time to be done by 9:30. We also want to leave some space for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to dive in. Are we good to go? Actually, let's pray really quick. All right. So Lord, just thank you so much for all these parents of daughters, and what an important role it is that we have a responsibility to be there for our daughters and to raise them to be in your image, and to have the identity of you, to have deep roots in Christ. Lord, I just am thankful for our Kensington community. Like I said earlier, it is multiple campuses, but we are one church. And Lord, we are just asking tonight that you are in the center of this, and that whether we get something little or a whole lot, that you just are permeating within this meeting. So we prayed all of this in your name. Amen. All right. So last week when we were all kind of talking, and bouncing different ideas off of each other. One thing that kept coming up over and over was expectations. Like, what is the expectation of us as parents, and what do we expect of our daughters? And I kind of wanted to kick it off to Kathy first. So Kathy, will you go ahead and share what you were talking about with the importance of knowing, like, what is developmentally appropriate in the expectation?
Probably one of the most important things when you're trying to balance the expectations that you might have as a family or from values or whatever is just being able to understand where your child is developmentally and balancing those expectations for the children based on, just like I said, where they are developmentally. And the caution I would have would be that we keep those expectations realistic, and that we aren't pushing our kids into early adulthood, which our society certainly tries to make that happen. But, just knowing that at different ages and stages, children think differently, they react differently emotionally, and keeping those things clearly in mind. I think about, the cycles of development that kids go through. And, like, for instance, like a four-year-old is just a wild and woolly person, whether they're a girl or a boy. They're going to be very active and love to talk and make things up and have, all kinds of just fantasies in their heads and all that. And they're delightful people, but they can be really annoying. So you have to sometimes balance that out. But, and on the other end, you're talking about as kids move through cycles, let's say like a 13-year-old. 13-year-olds are notorious for being very introverted, and they just don't want to talk about their feelings. They don't want to talk to anybody really. And they spend an awful lot of time in their room, or they're just starting to reach out to their friends more than they are their family. But again, they just seem kind of mournful a lot of times. But if you understand where your child is developmentally, you're going to have a lot easier time balancing those expectations with them. And there's lots of resources for finding out about where kids are developmentally. Not everything, not every child marches through those developmental cycles the same way, but at least you'll have a somewhat of a framework of what's going on. I have twin 4-year-old granddaughters who when we try to talk to them on the phone, it's just an absolute zoo. And then, our 7-year-old granddaughter, who is in kind of a phase where she's a little more introverted and a little quieter. You have to kind of work harder to get things out, from her. So again, just having those expectations and understanding they're not miniature adults. And a lot of people kind of put that out on kids, is that they shouldn't be able to think like we do, or rationalize like we do, or understand emotion like we do. And they're just beginning. They've got so much ahead of them, and you just have to be patient and loving and understand them more. Just be with them for where they are developmentally.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. I'm getting a couple messages. Kathy, if you could try to move your computer maybe a little closer just for your microphone, or maybe try to speak up a little bit. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that better?
What's that?
Is that better?
That was actually kind of funny. Yes, I am having an okay time hearing you. So maybe just try to speak up just a little bit, Kathy, for us. Thank you so much. Brian and Rita, just to kind of, or Reba, I don't know why I just said Rita, to kind of piggyback off of what Kathy was saying, it was really awesome what you guys were saying last week about the expectations for each of your girls, but they can't be the same because of the different personalities of your girls. Will you mind kind of just touching on that and what you were saying?
So I came into parenting with what I thought would be the right way of doing things, but I learned kind of the hard way that one style and one size doesn't fit all. So my oldest, who's 12, typical firstborn, rule-abiding, goal-oriented, consequence-driven, I could do a timeout and she responded very well. My middle, who's a little bit more free-spirited, less things that are absolutes, you throw in her timeout and she unravels at the seams, and it just was not productive. And then my middle one, obviously we got a little bit more lax as the third comes along, but she's super stubborn. I'm not very stubborn, but I said, you know what? My yes is yes, my no is no. And as a parent, I am going to win. But as I tried to resist her stubbornness, she just dug her heels in more, and it would be a power struggle. So I learned the hard way that each kid's, teaching points, discipline, they have to be catered to their personality, just like their love languages and what their affirmations need to be, or if they're more touchy-feely or they just needed more of, the positive reinforcement. Their love languages on the flip side were also different, and I need to cater to each kid's specific personalities.
Yeah, that's great. Brian, as a dad to 3 girls, do you have any perspective on that?
No, I just reiterate what Reba said. I mean, the relationships I have with each of the 3 daughters are totally different. And I think one of the struggles that I have is I do blend a little better sometimes personality wise with a certain daughter versus the other. And I got to really make the effort to make sure that all of them know that they're special, they're unique.
Oh, darn it. We just lost them. Or is that on my end or is that their end? Can you guys hear me?
Hear you.
Why does Daddy love you? Loves you because you're his daughter, and that's it. Not because you did, or you're the serious one, or you're the successful one. I love you because you're my daughter, and that's the baseline and the final. And it's just like to Reba's point, just kind of knowing each one's idiosyncrasies. They're all created differently, and if you try to treat them all the same, you really have an uphill battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, you just said something that really I feel was very vulnerable and very honest. And I heard you say sometimes because their 3 personalities are different, you may, resonate with one more than the other, but it's super important to make sure, that it's equal with all 3. Gosh,
Yeah.
that I just want to praise you for saying that out loud because
Well,
I
sometimes
think a lot
the truth is sometimes Reba will tell me, hey, she'll correct me because it's just like dealing with any people. You tend to have personalities that mesh a little bit better. And I love all my kids equally. There's no doubt. But sometimes you find yourself maybe giving someone a little bit of a little leniency when you wouldn't have given the other ones. And the expectations can't really be different because you love them all for who they are.
That's great. That's great. Michelle, when we were talking last week, you said a word in this and it was tensions. And I was wondering if you could go ahead and actually you were really talking about a little bit. Oh, look at, she's like, what did I say? Well, let me just put it this way. So what is your perspective on this, on expectations as a parent?
Wow. Okay. I would say expectations, as we were talking through it, is expect it to be really hard. Expect parenting to be difficult and expect it to be a marathon and not a sprint. That is just going to be a long road, and expect it to be a lot of fun. That's one thing too, I guess. But I think the biggest word is expect it to be difficult. It's going to be a challenge. There's going to be times when you don't know what to do. Expect to need help. Expect it to be hard. That's probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really honest.
Yeah.
Because it's when I just remember like when you get pregnant and it's the baby shower and everyone's so excited and it's going to be awesome, but no one tells you in that phase of like how hard it's going to be. So I appreciate that. I think that's a really honest answer. Let's move on to communication. I think this is a huge piece to raising daughters. So we all want to make sure that we're staying connected to our girls' hearts and what's happening with their lives. That's for sure, foremost. But what advice would you give regarding staying connected with your girls? What do you guys do? Rob and Michelle, one thing that I loved, again, when we were speaking last week was it's all about the timing. Michelle, I loved how you were sharing the story about your walks with one of your girls, and you just really picked up the nuances of I've had to discover when it was right for my child, for them, when I could talk to them. Go ahead and just kind of elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about how timing is everything. that some girls open up at different times, and for us to be a student of our child, just like Reba was saying, you want to know each one so intimately, that you know what is going to make them open up. Is it being one-on-one with them? Is it outside of the house? Are they more likely to talk side by side, which a couple of my girls love to go on walks. So we walk till we drop and they talk when they're side by side with me. And one of my girls does not enjoy that except for moonwalks. So we would go on moonwalks. It would be midnight, and sometimes she'd be up and sometimes not. Sometimes I'd just wake her up. And that was the time, even just as an older child, she would even hold my hand. So that was kind of like selfish walks for me. But just finding something that they love to do and doing it on their timing is important. It's also equally important to know when not to try to talk and engage with them. And whether it's like right after school when I was ready to talk, to respect the fact that maybe some of them are more introverted and they need some time. So to know when to talk and to know when not to talk is very important.
No, that's really great. Rob, did you have anything to add in there?
Yeah, I think as Michelle was talking about that, the thought that came to mind is our girls want to be heard too, right? So communication isn't just parent to child, but child back to parent. And as they go through the developmental stages that Kathy was talking about, the freedom and the confidence that they have to communicate back with Michelle or myself, we really worked hard at being open. So our physical composure, our attitude to hearing and really listening, that I struggled with that early on, and Michelle helped coach me on that. But I think that's a big piece, that your kids know that they are going to be heard by you.
And they're not going to be judged by you. I think that's the other thing, is that they aren't going to be judged by what they have to say. That's so crucial with kids.
Yes, that's a great point, Kathy. For when they open up, that they're coming to you because you're the safe space and that there's no judgment in what they're saying.
Especially our great face readers. You know, they can tell more by your facial reaction than anything that's coming out of your mouth. You can be, saying, well, that's okay, but what's coming out of your face may be saying, that's not okay. So you have to really think about how you are approaching and watch and listening to them and figuring out what reaches them. Jack, my husband, talks a lot about being careful not to over talk kids, because when you over talk kids, they under listen. And I love that phrase. I think that that's so accurate when you're communicating with the children.
Kathy, can you say that one more time? Say that line one more time.
Yeah, that to be careful not to over talk your children, because the more you talk, the less they listen. He says over talk results in under listening by the children, especially teenagers. After a while it's that blah blah blah, that's what they're hearing. So just to be cautious about that.
Yeah, that's real. I love that. Over talk equals under listen. I love that. That your husband is such a wise man. I do love that guy.
Married for 53 years, so I think it's working.
That's working. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really, really great. And Brian, I love if you can jump in here, if you don't mind, and just share with the group what you do with each of your daughters and how you make it special for them.
Yeah, early on when Reba was pregnant with our first child, I did some reading and took some classes on being a father. And one of the things that kept coming up was how pivotal a father can be, and how that role can be, and how important it is to date your daughter. And so often, my friends who have both boys and are blessed with both boys and girls, the dad spends a lot of time with the boy and the mom spends a lot of time with the girls, and there's kind of a disconnect there. So obviously we have all girls, so for me that wasn't an option. And so I tried to start dating my daughters right off the bat. And it wasn't easy at first. My youngest is definitely mama's girl. And we would go out to breakfast or lunch, and I'd let her order everything that Reba wouldn't let her order. And then I thought everything was going well, and she said, "Can I go home and see mommy?" And so it wasn't always perfect, but I started early, and we just started finding fun things to do with each daughter, one-on-one daddy time. And one of the things we do a lot of now is we do a lot of hunting. And I would have never thought that my daughters were so into hunting and passionate about it like I am. And the cool thing about it is I get to spend one-on-one time with them in the woods, and we spend a lot of time, and it's just a lot of just downtime talking and going back and forth. And they think I'm enjoying it because I'm hunting and following my passion, but I really don't care about that as much anymore. My reward is just that one-on-one time. Just this last weekend, we were walking around the woods and it was dark, and my daughter held my hand and we were walking out, and I thought, man, this is just so great. I'm so blessed to be able to have this time with them, away from society, away from the world, just her and I. And each one of those daughters, we spend separate time in the woods together, and it's just been a really great avenue for us to communicate and talk, and for me just to listen and learn. It's been great.
That's really great. And I kind of just right here, I want to pause for a minute, because the reality is not everybody on this call is married, right? So single mamas right now, I just want to shout out to you that are on this call. I was a single mom for several years. It was about 5 years I was a single mom. And the importance of having a male role, a strong male role for daughters especially, is very, very vital, very important. So, but don't let it discourage you. Like if your daughter's father is in the picture or not in the picture, more so not in the picture, it's just a male role. So I was very fortunate that my dad stepped in and was very solid with Haley. And those two are thick as thieves. They're, like I said, Haley's 22. Those two are best friends. My dad's 73, she's 22. And you guys, she can't do anything wrong. I'm just saying, I play no role anymore being a mother because he just takes the cake. So, I praise Brian so much for really stepping in and really doing what God is asking him to do, to be that strong male, role model, Christ follower to his daughters. Don't be discouraged, single mamas, because you can find it in a grandpa, an uncle, a close friend. So I just wanted to pause and give that a shout out. And again, I know Susan has put it in the chat a couple times, but if you guys have any questions as we're rolling along, throw them in the chat. So, we can pause. We don't have to keep on going. We've got several different things we want to get through. But we're doing this for you guys. So if you've got questions, throw them in the chat. So let's see. Okay, cool. All right, let's move on to body image, which is personally, that is one thing that's really, I'm very passionate about that with girls. And I find that from when Haley was in elementary to when, my others were in elementary, and it wasn't that far apart, it was only like a 10-year difference, things had already changed. And the things that Macery and Avery would come home and say, Haley never came home and said. So I feel like the pressures of body image and society, social media, like what we're putting on our daughters, is huge right now. We've got a panel that has so much wisdom in it. So I'm excited to dive into this one. So Michelle, you were talking about identity. I would love for you, and I know you had some notes on that in your journal, I would love for you to kick us off in that and start that conversation, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big passion of mine too, with girls only in our house. And I think as we backed it up, and as a couple, we thought, what is our goal with this topic for our girls? And our goal was really to have two things: that our girls would come out with a strong sense of identity and a healthy view of their body. And so identity really only comes from the Lord, which it really has nothing to do with the size or shape of your body. And so from day one, as they were even little babies, even before they were born, we made it our mission really to put God's word in their minds so they would know who they are. Things that we just said to our girls all the time, where you're a daughter of the King, You are God's workmanship. You're a prized possession. You're created with a purpose. God knows every hair on your head. He knows every tear that you cry. I mean, all the things that were so intimate. He delights in you. Everything that he knows about you, we wanted them to know that that is who they are. Not, like you said, everyone else is going to tell them who they are. And so if it's not the truth from God, they will start believing what the world says. And that comes in, oh my gosh, with the body image more than so many other things. The other thing I thought was really important, and it was a challenge for me, was that girls are always looking to their moms for direction. And so it made me look at my own relationship with my body. What are the things that I think about my body? What are the things that I talk about with my body? How do I talk about other girls' bodies in front of my girls? And so your girls are gonna hear more than, from what you say on the daily than what you try to teach them. So you just need to watch your words. I think that all of us as women can think back to maybe something negative that someone did say about our bodies. We just don't forget those things. It could be anybody. So it's really important as the mom to get to know the word yourself so you can pass that on to your girls. And the other thing I would say is really watch the words you use to describe bodies. Like, one of the things, we never really use the word like fat or skinny or thick or thin. I don't know, just all the words that just are so specific. We would use the words strong. Your body is strong. Maybe that's not healthy for you, things like that. So, and in a house full of girls, we decided we didn't want their days to ever start, mine too, with feeling good about my body because of my weight or bad about my body because of weight. So we decided day one not to have a scale in our house. And I think our adult girls, thank us for that. And none of them have scales, as far as I know, in their homes right now. So those are just a few things with the body image for us.
And I think it's probably everybody on this call is thinking this right now. We sort of escaped the social media onslaught just from when they were born and when social media really hit. And we've seen it. Our girls have talked to us about it. There's an incredible amount of pressure from the world, from a body image, and is my body attractive? Is it in? Is it cool? Is it all the things that social media and that the world is selling them? You can't undo it, but you can stop the flow of it depending upon the age of your girls. We made decisions at certain times in their lives to make sure that certain things weren't coming in to their lives or to our home. And I think that was it was a hard thing to do, but it was a really smart thing to do. And I guess I'll call it out here now to the dads. I made a pact with Michelle early on that I never was going to talk about weight to my girls ever. And this might come off a little strong, guys, but I'm going to tell you to don't say a single word ever, and I mean ever, about your daughter's weight or her body. You can think it, but don't you dare say it. And don't whisper it in the bedroom to your wife sometime. Make sure you are by yourselves, but you don't need to say anything. And I said it last week, and I'm not sure I should say it this way, but I'll just put it this way, okay? Shut your pie hole about weight for your girls, period.
I love it. I love how blunt you are. There you go. That's good. I think it's so important. I really do. I just appreciate the vulnerability and how honest and open everyone's being right now, because there's things that we think, but we don't want to say. So I really do. I just appreciate it. And I think, I struggled when I didn't, my father he's an amazing, amazing man, but he wasn't a present father. He traveled a ton and, he just wasn't in the household and the way that I wish that he was. And, Michelle, you were saying, one comment about your body growing up, and it's like, do you remember that? And I love my dad. I'm not bashing my dad. We've got a great relationship. But I started having body issues and even some like eating disorder, issues. And I'm definitely not blame my dad on it. It's just, I applaud you for being so strong in your thinking. And I love that we're doing this tonight because we learn from each other. We're in community with each other. And that's how we grow. And we make mistakes along the way, and that's okay. We're forgiven on those. But then we just pivot, and I'm learning from you, Rob, and Michelle, and and everyone else. And again, that's how we grow. I think it's awesome. So I kind of tied in like the whole body image and social media. It's separate, but I kind of lump it together. So I do want to move into social media. And Brian and Reba, you guys were sharing kind of like what happens in your house and how you have decided as a family, the phones and the social media. Kind of tell us how it works in your household for you guys.
Well, how we kind of look at it is our children are going to be molded and sculpted one way or the other. And we can either choose to have them sculpted by society and the world, which for the most part has the mentality of everything's good and there's no black and white, there's no rules. As long as the person's doing it and they feel okay with it, that's great. Or we can sculpt our children with our feelings and in the Lord's world, Bible, the biblical truth that we wanted to raise our children up with. So we have tried to limit the amount of technology and the time that they spend on it. And we just are not going to allow our children to partake in social media. Now they're younger, but as the 12-year-old and the 9-year-old, as she's turning 10, most of their friends have phones and most of their friends are starting to be on social media and they're back and forth. And, we just made a decision that we're gonna spend time with each other. We're gonna spend time outside. We're gonna spend time reading the Bible and doing Bible stories versus giving our kids out to social media where we don't know what they're gonna find and where they're gonna go. We'd rather kind of write the script ourselves, at least when we can, at least when they're young and vulnerable. And so our goal was to not allow social media in the house for them, and limit the amount of technology and not allow them to have phones. And it's tough sometimes because their friends all have phones and they want to know why they're not like them. And we have to keep telling them because we're different. And, the Johnsons are just different. We're not like the world. We're different. And that's just the way it is. And they've, for the most part, kind of accepted that. And then we were
going to wait another year for our 12-year-old to get a phone, and most of her friends do have a phone. But then COVID hit, and our childcare and our office hours didn't always overlap. And there was times when our 3 girls were home and we don't have a landline, and we needed the ability, and she was now learning her own school, teaching her siblings, and being a caregiver provider. And we needed a quick form of communication between our office and her. And so we did give her a phone, but we do not have the phone in the room. She charges it in the kitchen, and we have parental access and those monitoring type things. And she knew that wasn't an option to have it up in her phone at night, so she'd stay up super late. And it's not a discussion, oh, can I have it another hour in my room, or can I keep it tonight? No, charge it up in the kitchen where we can see it and we can monitor.
Yeah, but still no social media. I mean, our goal is to stay. I mean, inevitably we'll probably have to allow them to do that. But as long as we can hold out, as long as we can be the ones that's providing the truth and not allowing them to be filled with the world's view, that's what we're going to do. And they just kind of accepted it, and it's just the way it is in our household.
And something that Kathy said earlier about knowing where your child is developmentally, I think when we give them the social media early, sometimes it's hard to know that, okay, this was the 15th shot that the person took with the right filter and the right lighting, and they have a distortion of body image, or perfect, everyone's going on a trip, or everyone got a new car, or everyone got invited to the birthday party. Now it's in your face that you didn't get invited, or you didn't make the cut, and so forth. So I think developmentally, my 12-year-old, I just don't think is ready to see all the highlights of everybody's and nothing about the lowlights. And so I think it would be hard for her to have that right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love the highlight and the low light. I love that, because that's what social media is. Very rarely do people post their lowlights on social media. That's just the truth of it. Kathy, I loved when you were talking about the partial attention equals partial value. That sentence that you said really stuck out. Could you go ahead and just elaborate a little bit more on that and any additional thoughts that you have? I think you might have to come closer to your microphone. Come closer to your microphone.
How's that?
Yep, there you go.
That's as close as I can get.
Okay.
I think as parents, no matter what age child you have to examine your own technology habits, in terms of how much time you spend on your laptop or your iPad or your phone, and kind of look at what the kids are seeing. Even our little, 4-year-old granddaughters, I can remember when they were 2 years old, picking up their mother's phone and starting to scroll across it. They'd already figured that out, that's what that phone was for. So I just ask parents, look at your own technology habits and recognize the fact that when your child is talking to you, or you're sharing a meal with them, whatever it is that you're doing, your phone should not be part of that activity. I always say to people, put your phone down so you can actually hear your child, so you can pay attention to them. And when I go into a restaurant and I see parents sitting with their kids in a restaurant, and the kids are sitting there across the table just kind of staring at their parents who are on their phones. There's very few really life-threatening situations that need to be handled on a phone while you're having your dinner with your child. So I know it sounds harsh, but really, putting your phone down and recognizing the fact that partial attention means partial value. So if you're only partially paying attention to your child, you're really saying to them, what you're saying to me is only partially important. So, it sounds harsh, but again, I think you really need to look at your own technology habits when you're working with kids. And I totally agree with Brian and Reba about, trying to protect their children as long as they can from the social media, and helping them recognize that the world they're seeing on that is not the real world, or real friendships that they're doing, playing video games with somebody across the country. That's not a real friendship. And just preparing them for how to handle that, what they're going to do when it comes into their lives. So, but again, I'd put it on a t-shirt if I could, that says partial attention equals partial value. So that's my word for the night.
I love it. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways I took from when we met last week. That's one of those gut punching sentences, Kathy. I'm so glad that you brought that to the table, because it's so true. So thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. Michelle and Rob, I loved how you guys talked to your daughters as they were growing up, that you guys were a team. Will you go ahead and highlight that a little bit for us?
Yeah, we started off with, it was sort of the Houtlands first, right? It was our squad. And we wanted to make sure that even if it was our team, we were going to have fun, we were going to enjoy life together, and it was going to be us first. And we also began with sort of the end in mind, right? What was the goal? We wanted to raise ultimately women that followed Jesus and had a heart for him. And we knew it wasn't going to be easy. As Michelle said earlier, it's hard, right? But we were going to have a lot of fun and laughs along the way, and it was going to be about us. And it's interesting, we actually got a comment back from a friend of one of our daughters who said the Houtland house was sort of culty. And you know what? I got to be honest with you, that doesn't bother me at all. Because we're unashamed of the gospel, and that's how we were going to roll. And so knowing that we are children of the King and that He's got us, I mean, we wanted it to be about us first in a healthy way, right? It wasn't that we were shutting people out, because we had an awesome community and still have an awesome community with the friendships that we had there that are almost deeper than family. But it was our squad first, the Houtland squad.
I love that. So great. You don't mind being a cult. Hey, it's the Houghton cult. So good.
I think Jesus is a cult.
Amen. Amen to that. We do have a question that rolled in. For those of us who have children using social media, are there any recommendations? interestingly enough, my children do not use social media. I know the Johnsons do not, Kathy's. So I don't really know how to answer that question because, well, let me tell you this. I can go off to Haley. So that's right. I forgot that I do have an older kid that grew up with social media. You guys, this is really bad. She's kind of like I would never say this to her. I promise you, I've never said this to her, but Tim and I kind of joke around that she's like kind of like our test run because there's like such a huge age difference. And I had her when I was 20. So I didn't know what I was doing. And I was a single mom. And I'm like, Haley, thank you so much. Like you've really made me grow up and you've taught me a lot. So our relationship now is just so great. Anyways, that was a total side note. So yeah, with Haley, so she's interesting because unfortunately she grew up right when social media hit. So she got a phone in 6th grade. I wasn't a fan of that. That was an outnumbered decision, and did not have social media until she was in 9th grade. So that's when like Facebook and, was really starting to get big. I definitely am going to learn from Haley because I didn't put very strict restrictions on it. I just trusted her. One thing that I regret doing as a parent, I'm just going to call myself and put it under the bus right now, is I did not do what Brian and Reba are now doing, that the phone is on the counter. No phones at night. Because I would tell Haley, whatever time it was, I don't remember, 9, 10 o'clock, you're off your phone. Well, if the phone is in the room, that's just temptation. And I'm not going to be naive enough to know that, to think that Haley didn't look at her phone or wasn't on social media, late at night when she should be winding down and sleeping for school the next day. So that is one thing that I definitely will do different with Macery and Avery. So yeah. Gosh, other than that, I feel like, another thing is what I did do with Haley. And I was not ashamed of this, is it's actually technically our phone. Dad and I, we pay for this phone. It's our phone. So if I want to go into the phone and look at it at any given point, I'm allowed to do that. And I did it randomly. I didn't tell her when I was doing it. I would just pick up the phone. She had a passcode on it, but I always knew the passcode. I knew all of her passwords to her different things. So that I did do, and that I highly recommend, because it was great to open up conversation, because there were times where I would see a text thread between girls, or, and it's not that I was trying to be like snooping or prying, but I also wanted her to understand, kind of like what you guys are saying, Rob and Michelle, is like, we're a team first. Another thing, gosh, this is so good. Good friend of mine, Kristen, this is so great. So these are not my words. These are her words. So who gets to tell you that you're cool or not, pretty or not? Who gets to say what kind of person you are? It's important that every voice in their lives not have equal weight. I love that sentence. It's important that every voice in their lives not have equal weight. It's not about the majority. It's only the people who love them most that get to speak with weight. So that is like your team Johnson. That is your team Wilson, right? That is your team. That's your core. So those are the words that give the most weight. So those were words of Kristen Pelletier, and gosh, I love that. I'm like going to print that up and plaster that on my girls' walls, because I think it's so, so important.
Jill,
Jill, you bring up a great point. Scripture tells us that God sings over us, right? And that loudest voice of God singing over us, I think Michelle and I tried to do the same thing, to sing over our girls in the way in which we lived our family together. But the one thing I did want to call, I just thought of as you were talking through that, we also wanted to make sure our home was a place that their friends felt comfortable as well, right? So our house would be the gathering place, and they would have freedom to enjoy their friendships and do the fun things. But at the same time, we wanted it where we were a part of that appropriately, right? So it wasn't like we were sitting down and playing the video games or anything like that, even though we didn't have a lot of video games because we had girls. But you know, if it was going to be a movie night or just hanging out and inviting girls and boys over for dinner, right? A pizza party or whatever it is, we were like, okay, fine, we're going to do that. Knowing that even though it was us, we were going to be inclusive and welcoming of everyone that was beginning to become a part of their lives as well.
And I would say one more thing, and just, I feel like I need to stop and acknowledge how incredibly tiring it is for you parents with technology and social media. I cannot even imagine, because we kind of got out of that too alive, because it hit our girls probably in later middle school, early high school. But it was a battle even then, and it was just a portion of what it is now. So as we even talk about, like, I know Kathy had a good point of those are not real friendships, but to our girls, they feel like real friendships. Like it is everything to them to be connected with the phone. So I would just want to encourage you guys, because I know it's exhausting. It's tiring. And maybe you have to play good cop, bad cop, or you got to have some friends that will lift you up and tell you, yes, you're making the right decision. And you need to have some reinforcements for sure, because they'll wear you down. I don't care what age they are, they will wear you down. So yeah, keep on, keep, yeah.
That's good.
Keep forging.
Jill,
Kathy,
can I add real quick?
Oh, go ahead, Reba.
I don't have it. I don't know what the apps are, but I do know that my friends who do monitor their kids' phones and so forth, they do have some apps where you can actually put limits of, you can only be on this app for an hour. And if you want more time, it has to come as a text to the parent to say, will you authorize, almost like, would you give me another 30 minutes or 20 minutes, where there can be some parameters there. Again, we don't have that right now because we're not at that stage, but I've seen other parents say, okay, yeah, that video game on your phone, get an hour, go run outside for 20 minutes, and then you can have another 30.
That's great. If anyone knows what that app is, go ahead and throw it in the chat. I think that's great. If any of you guys use that, or if anyone knows that. Kathy, I think you were going to, I think you wanted to share something. Were you trying to say something earlier?
No, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree with Michelle. The technology thing is exhausting when, you know, our kids were well past that. I mean, as they're adults, but I see the struggle even they are having with it you know, at their ages. They're grown-ups, they're, you know, married, or my daughter's a single mom or whatever. And I think the pressure for social media, even for adults, is tough. And I think it's exhausting to manage it with your kids. I know we have some close friends in Florida who have 4 teenagers, and their kids turn their phones in at 10 o'clock every night to their parents, and their phones are in the nightstands in their parents' bedroom. And I think it's probably one of the best things they've ever done. And they keep their computer in their living room, or the computers the kids use, so that they can monitor what's going on, and they're protecting their kids and their girls especially, you know, from a lot of bullying that goes on social media and stuff. So I don't see anything wrong with parents being vigilant and setting boundaries and sticking to it, no matter it's exhausting. And Michelle said, you know, find somebody else that will tell you it's okay. You know, go ahead and be the guardian angel for your child against this thing that is very invasive into all of our lives. So that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, that's really good. Thank you for that. Thank you for adding. So I wanted to go, because I'm recognizing the time, and you always think that you have so much time, and then you look at it and it flies by. I want to go ahead and move into friendships and boys. And honestly, keep those questions coming in the chat. I know Susan's doing a great job by reading all of those and trying to answer them as we go along. So keep them coming, but I am going to move on. Friendships and boys. Michelle, it was you who had said equipped over protect. And I loved that. If you can go ahead and just kind of explain a little bit by what you meant on that.
Okay. I think that as we were kind of talking about what we would do over differently if we had the chance, I think we were very good at protecting our kids, knowing the things that they couldn't handle at different ages. But as we look back, we think, any kind of fear-based parenting, I would love to back that up and really exchange that with equipping them for what they're going to handle ahead. Instead of being so like closed, I would want them, just because I think it's harder now for kids as they're growing up even. We don't even have any idea, I don't think, what goes on in the schools and when we're not there with them. So to equip them for different things they're going to come across would be probably a bigger, higher goal for us.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Rob.
I agree with that, but I still felt that a key piece of my role as a father was to protect. And I still think that's a really, really important point. We made decisions when they were in middle school and high school. I made some decisions to be involved in where they were going to be because I wanted to be in a position where I knew what was going on the boy front and the friend front, and I could be a part of that and know more than just what I was hearing, right? And so I still feel like that role is incredibly important. Where Michelle's coming from, I think, on that, the equipping piece is you focus on that piece rather than the fear piece, right? Which I totally agree with. But I still think the role for the father in this, and I know there's some single mothers, and that's why it's important to find a male role model that to help come alongside you at some point, an uncle or a brother or whatever it might be, because that protection is really important. Because there aren't people that are going to jump in and protect your kids for you.
True.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Brian, you were talking about how you make it very clear in your household that God's first, and then it's family, and then friendships and boys. Will you go ahead and, for the both of you, both Brian and Reba, go ahead and just explain that a little bit.
It's parenting is a struggle. We certainly are not perfect parents, not even times great parents, but it's a hard balancing act with our work and being a mother and a father. And when you look at parenting, you're looking at school and the sports and our kids' friendship and soon boys. And sometimes it's a big struggle as far as our kids. Do they have enough friends? Are they doing well in school? Are they doing well in sports? All these different things you look at. At the end of the day, Reba and I we'll stop and say, hey, what's the number one thing? What's the most important thing as parents? And the most important thing for us is to equip our girls with the love of the Lord. And if we can do that, and we put that at number one, at the top thing, everything else falls into perspective. Because it's great that they get good grades, and that's important to us, but that's not our number one thing. It's great that they have friends, and friends are wonderful, and we want them to be social, and we're social people too, but that's still not number one. And it's great to be in sports. So we try to, as parents, have that as top of our list, and we try to as best we can instill that from an early age. And when it comes to even boys, I do my best, and I definitely fall short, but trying to be a good father and a good husband. So as a little child, my daughters see that. And as they get a little bit older, when we talk about, it's important when you do find a boy that boy loves the Lord. And that characteristic is kind of interwoven, we hope, in their development, so that when they do go out in the world, because they're going to go out in the world, and we want them to go out in the world, they'll be armed with that truth. They'll be armed with that strength. So we hope not to be fearful, because we've instilled that importance in them. And it helps us because it kind of puts things in perspective. And that for us is the prism that we view our parenting through.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Reba, did you have anything to add to that?
No, he pretty much summed it up there.
Awesome. One piece of advice that I got from Mark and Callie Nelson, I just love, and I do it to my girls every single night, is Mark and Callie, they prayed over their daughters when they were growing up. And they not only prayed over their daughters, but they prayed for their daughters' future husbands, like even when their daughters were in elementary school. And when Mark was telling me that, it blew my mind, because I just never had even thought of doing that. Didn't even think of it. Like, of course I want my girls to marry godly men and strong men and family and faith. Never crossed my mind to even start praying about it now. And so now I do. I pray for Macy and Avery's future husbands now, and they're 11 and 13. So I think that's beautiful. I would highly encourage you guys to start doing that now, because how beautiful is it and here's a plug. So Ryan Morrill is going to be hosting a Raising Godly Boys in January. So how beautiful if Ryan tells all of those parents of the boys, right? And they start praying over their boys' future wives. And we all start praying about, our girls' future husband. Like, think about that. I think it's beautiful. And I hope that there's a mom and dad praying over a little boy right now. I just think it's the sweetest vision. So I just would encourage you guys to do that. Just a couple scriptures I wanted to throw out that I love is, and maybe Susan, you can throw these in the chat. I'm not going to read them. You guys can look them up just because of time. But Proverbs 31:25, 1 Timothy 4:12, and Joshua 1:9. Those are some really, again, just near and dear scriptures to my heart on raising girls. And then finally, I would love, Susan, oh gosh, see how fast you are? You're just amazing, Susan. If you can share the screen, I'd love to show this graph before we close out this evening. I know we're at 9:30. If you need to go, it's totally fine. But again, Kristen had shared this graphic with me, and I just think it was so powerful. I wanted to share it with you guys. So I can see Susan working on it. I know you are. Thank you guys. So while Susan's pulling that up, thank you so much for joining us. I know 8:30 to 9:30 is late after a day of working and a full day of parenting. But that it works, when you get your kids to bed so we can actually do this. So awesome. Oh, almost, there it is. So this is really great. I wanted to leave this with you guys tonight. So the behavior is on top, the beliefs are on the bottom. And what I think that we do often as parents, and actually I won't even call you guys out, maybe not all of you guys do this. I find myself that I do this, is if Macy or Avery acts up and it's their behavior, I tend to go directly to, I need to prune this behavior. I need to, why are they acting this way? I need to prune it. I need to figure out why they're acting this way, instead of going deeper into the beliefs, because the beliefs are like the Christ roots. And so if their beliefs are really deep down in Christ and it's their identity and they know who they are, then their behavior is going to reflect that. Their behavior is going to reflect their beliefs. Now, that's not always true, right? I mean, mine right now are on a stage of I've got the hormonal, preteen and teen, right? And so they're not always thinking rationally. So I know that they have deep roots and beliefs in God, and they love Jesus, but they still act out. But I am quick to I need to prune that behavior, as opposed to, let's go to the root. Let's prune this belief. what is it? What's happening right now? Why is it that you're feeling this way or you're acting this way? Do we, what do we need to pray to God about? What do we need to ask God about? What is it that he is asking you to do? Just all of those different types of questions. I'm a visual learner, so I loved that graphic, and I wanted to end the evening with that. I hope you guys can kind of take something away from that. Johnson's, Hoatlands, Mrs. Wilson, do you guys have anything, last words before we kind of close out here?
Hey, I just had a quick question come in for Brian. Cassidy would like to know about any book recommendations or the book you read about dating his daughters.
Oh man. I don't remember the exact book. I actually took a couple classes. I took a class through our church at the time when we were living in the Royal Oak area. And so a lot of that was from there. So I don't remember exactly what book it was, but there was some data from Focus on the Family in that group that just showed, what a male's role, and in particular father's role, but certainly can be another form of uncle or brother. We've kind of talked about that, but how instrumental it is in regards to a daughter's development. And to be honest with you, when you looked at some of the data, it was surprising that the father actually had more influence on a lot of things, in particular on faith-based things, than the mother did, or the mother and the father. So I can't recall exactly what book that was, but it was on Dr. Dobson's Focus on the Family series that looked into that, and that kind of started that whole discussion about dating your daughters.
Thanks, Brian. Oh, I see somebody just threw a recommendation in there.
Actually, that was the book that the class was based on right there. Actually, I do remember that. Well, we had a couple of them, but that was one of the books. And that book is a great book for fathers or for men in girls' life, that really spells out how important that role is and how instrumental that role can be. Doesn't have to be, but can be. That's a great book. I highly recommend it. And that was part of the class that it was based off that book.
Right. So it looks like it's called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Good.
Awesome.
All right. Does anybody else have any last minute questions? Otherwise, we can. Thank you.
So great. I really appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Thank you so much for the panel. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate the wisdom that you brought. I've learned so much from you guys, honestly. Again, Susan and Ryan, thank you so much for setting this up. If you've got family and friends that are raising boys, have them just keep a lookout on social media and our Kensington e-news. Sometime, the date's not landed, but it will be in January. So that would be a really great class for parents of boys, raising godly boys. So appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Praying for you, praying for your families. Have a great night, you guys.
Good night.
See you.